Hello and welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, as always, we are on great community radio stations such as 88.1 WBFH and community TV stations like Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Both of our TV outlets, Civic Center TV and Birmingham Area Municipal Access, can be found on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. In addition, you can watch today's show and every show online live in high definition on civiccentertv.com by clicking on our Watch Live link on the homepage on civiccentertv.com, where we also have all of the top headlines and news each and every day in the local area regarding coronavirus and other top stories throughout the area as they're coming in. Today's top stories on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Small businesses hurt by COVID-19 can now apply for economic recovery grants. Oakland County retail stores, restaurants, and personal service businesses such as salons and fitness centers impacted by the coronavirus pandemic can apply beginning today for part of the $32 million Oakland Together Small Business Recovery Grant Fund. The grants, which range from $2,500 to $10,000, provide an infusion of capital to support payroll expenses, rent, mortgage payments, utility expenses, and other similar payments that occur in the ordinary course of business. The funds come from the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or the CARES Act money allotted to Oakland County by the federal government. Quote, "We know that many of our small businesses have reopened, but the losses they suffered while they were closed for operating at reduced capacity are significant and continue to threaten their viability." That from Oakland County Executive David Coulter. He continued, quote, "We want to do all we can do to help them recover and continue to provide the goods and services that are so important to our residents," and closed quote. Applications are accepted online at oakgov.com/COVID/grants. And the deadline to apply is August 24th. And Ronnie, this is a program that's going to be vital for a lot of businesses that have continued to be closed in an abundance of caution or have had to close over time, had to close for a period during the early portions of the pandemic, or are still facing financial struggles as they are slowly but surely coming back into business.
Every single dollar counts when you're a small business. And it's not only the fact that you were closed, a lot of the businesses were closed, but on top of that, when they did reopen, there were new expenses that came along with that, such as having to have that PPE or realign some of their, areas within their facilities, providing, shields, to protect them and to protect their customers. So there's a big expense that came with reopening a lot of these businesses as well. So we encourage all the businesses here in Oakland County to try to take advantage of that.
Other news at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. 384 new coronavirus cases yesterday, with 7 deaths in the state of Michigan. Michigan reported 7 coronavirus deaths on Monday and 384 new cases as stronger laws on mask wearing went into effect statewide under a recent executive order from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Michigan is seeing an increase in the number of known cases of the disease COVID-19, with a 7-week high for new infections last week, with the total exceeding 3,400 new cases. The average number of new cases for the past seven days ending Monday was up to 507 per day, from an average of 382 a day for the previous 7-day period, according to state data. Reported deaths and hospitalizations due to the disease remain relatively low compared to in the spring and the early portions, of course, of this pandemic, but deaths were at a 4-week high, with 95 total deaths last week reported in the state of Michigan. The state health department confirmed 69,722 cases of COVID-19 and 6,075 deaths through Monday up until this point. When probable cases are added, Michigan's case total reaches about 77,198, with the death toll at about 6,321. So continuing to see several hundred new cases per day. It's been leveling off the last few days at about just under 400 cases, but still a significant number, and we're still seeing consistently over that period right around 10 deaths per day.
You would have to imagine that the numbers going up played into the governor's executive order requiring face coverings now in businesses. I know some people are not happy about that, but at the end of the day, it's about trying to keep us safe and trying to stop the spread. I will say yesterday, though, when the alert went off on my phone, I jumped. Did you get the alert on your phone?
I did. I got the alert on my phone. It was weird because you got the alert on the mask wearing right at like the end of regular business hours for the day at about 5 o'clock-ish. And then we also had that Amber Alert on top of that. So we had 2 messages come in within an hour. And every time that comes in, I'm immediately thinking, okay, this is something incredibly serious. This is the big one. What could this possibly be? And you come in, it's the mask order. But you got to find some way to remind the general population that maybe isn't tuning into the news as often, maybe isn't listening to this show because they clearly don't know how to spend their mornings properly. But and that's the way to do it. That's the way to get that out there. But I also think that in this case, the governor from the start has said, if we start to see things go south in our response to the pandemic, and we're not seeing consistently good numbers coming in each day, and the curve doesn't stay flat, so to speak, then we're going to take corrective action promptly, and in some ways it's going to be very stringently in order to curb that from going in the wrong direction too aggressively. And I think that in this case, the governor's actions were right on par with that, taking action probably a little bit early, I would think, after a jump in cases, to ensure that if it is because people are socializing more and it is because people are maybe letting their guards down, that they can have a clear message from the state government that says it's not over yet. We can't let our guards down, and if we are going to let them down, we're going to see spikes in cases, and we're going to have to take more corrective action down the line.
I wonder how much of this is playing into the psychology of people as well to try to get us ready for the upcoming school year. Because if the numbers continue to go up, she has said that the schools will not be reopening in the state of Michigan come the fall time. So by seeing this increase, putting that mask order in place, but then sending out that emergency alert, on top of that, it's sending a very strong message that you need to pay attention to this because there are going to be consequences down the road, and those consequences could be keeping schools closed.
Yeah, and I think that the state's done a really good job in preparing for all these different scenarios. They've required the schools to say, well, we got to be prepared to be in phase 3 or earlier, possibly too, where we're in a situation where nobody's in school. That's why I say prepare for phase 3, because what you do in phase 3, you can do in 2 and 1 as well. And hopefully we never have to go back to phase 3 or even definitely beyond that, further back. But if we have to go back to something like a phase 3 where it's very limited interaction out in the public, nobody's in school, we have those plans in place. If we're able to progress forward, we're able to stay where we're at now in phase 4 or possibly go into phase 5, we have options to put people in school and virtually. And on top of that, on other plans as well, such as what you were saying, putting out these messages that are clear, that are severe, that are very pointed, saying, we're taking this seriously. You need to take this seriously. If we continue to do this, we're going to beat this, at least in Michigan, and stay far ahead and be able to then mitigate what's coming in instead of how we're putting out COVID-19.
Exactly. So many different levels to this. And I know we are all sick and tired of COVID-19 and the pandemic, but it is here. And I know we thought, a lot of us, that this would be over by now, but it's not. It looks like it's going to stay with us through at least the end of the year. So we need to go ahead and just know that this is a part of our life for now, and we have to deal with it.
Lastly, today, our top stories: Michigan may move to shield businesses from coronavirus-related lawsuits. We talk about the governor's actions to put forth laws requiring face masks. This is kind of in opposition. Business owners across Michigan are looking for answers on how COVID-19 changes their legal liability as they reopen to the public and make changes for public health reasons. According to an article in Bridge, Michigan Magazine, State Representative Thomas Albert, a Republican from Lowell, is spearheading legislation that would address business liability for Michigan businesses that follow executive orders and CDC guidelines. The bill is in development and subject to change. If a business is operating in a prudent manner, in this case by following federal or state regulations or executive orders, it would be protected from civil liability. At least 4 states nationwide have passed laws granting business immunity from lawsuits related to COVID-19. An interesting development there too that I think could probably get a lot of support on both ends of the aisle. It's being sponsored by a Republican in the state legislature, but I think that this is something that people of all parties can really get behind to say, well, look, these businesses are doing their part. If they're doing their part and they're doing what they can to protect the people that are coming into their business, protect the people that are working at their business, protect the general public, by following these guidelines and following these laws, then if someone does get COVID-19 on site there, or someone that has been at their location, maybe they shouldn't have liability if they're clearly putting every effort forward and still coming up short, because with this kind of disease where it is unpredictable and there is a level of unknown to it, especially in the case of asymptomatic scenarios where people are asymptomatic and they're carrying the disease without knowing it and they're spreading it without knowing it, this is a situation where you can do everything right and still be wrong. This may be something that could help mitigate that on a liability level.
This, of course, is not talking about the businesses that are saying, the heck with all this executive order, we're going to stay open when we're not supposed to be open, and we're not going to follow the rules. But this is aimed at the ones that are following the guidelines. But you have to also remember, on top of this, these guidelines are changing constantly. And so it really is a lot for the businesses to stay on top of the consistent changes. You'd almost have to be an expert to try to follow all the rules and regulations and know where to find the information and how to go about even making some of these changes. So it's not just that you put out the guidelines, it's that the guidelines are changing so often it can be hard for these businesses to keep up with it.
It is. It's a lot to keep up with. There's a lot of constant changes going on that they need to be on top of, and putting something forth like this that says, look, you're rolling with these changes, you are following these guidelines, you are doing your part to do the right thing here. We are not going to punish you for this. We are not going to let you take the fall for a situation that you did your best to control, and it frankly was out of your control. I think that this is something that is necessary and could get some traction from both sides of the aisle, like we've seen on many other issues related to COVID-19 so far. So we will keep you updated on that. That making news online at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, along with all of our top stories each and every day as the coronavirus continues to affect different industries and different recreational activities all throughout the state of Michigan. It affects everybody's lives, and that's not limited to any one sector of business, of commerce, or of recreation, and that includes our state parks. And joining us now, our first guest today from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. He is their Chief of Parks and Recreation. Ron Olson joins us again on the Oakland County Megacast. Ron, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
How are you? How's your team been doing at the DNR?
Well, we're real busy with a lot of things. As you know, we opened camping back up on the 22nd of June, and things are really going well from that standpoint, but the parks are extremely busy with a lot of not only people seeking to go camping and doing outdoor activities, but also people, day users, and going to the water and the beaches and that sort of thing.
It's been getting really nice over the last few weeks here, other than, of course, the major heat wave we had last week. But even going into the 4th of July weekend, the weather was excellent. It was nice and sunny. There wasn't really any wet weather out there that was maybe would deter people from going to the parks or going camping as it reopened at the late end of June. How much of a spike, if any, did the state parks see in people that were eager to go camping over the 4th of July weekend and even since?
Well, we have had many parks that have seen day users, particularly more than they've seen in a long time. Obviously, over the 4th of July, when the weather is decent, historically we've had big crowds. But on the beginning prior to the 4th and even days after, we experienced very high numbers of people, and some of our staff, have we've talked to them around, that they've said that the years that they've been, one of the staff said they had been working for 10 years, and it's the most people I've seen at their particular park in that span of time around this time of year. So it definitely, people are eager to get out, and whether it's to go hiking, walking, swimming, just lounging around, having a barbecue or what have you, and going on trails has been very robust.
Speaking of staff, how has your staffing levels been this summer? Has it been hard for you to get that summer help in, or have you seen an influx because the students maybe want to work outside instead of inside?
Well, it started out slow. Obviously, we weren't able to hire our staff because of a hiring freeze, and then we did get an exception to that. So we were behind probably at least 6 or 8 weeks from where we were in the beginning, because we would have had all of our nearly 1,500, 1,800 summer workers or short-term workers. They would have been all on board and hired by early May, some much earlier than that. But we did not start that process for weeks after we normally would. So that consequently, as time has gone on, we've been playing catch up, and we're still behind in some parks. We have not been able to hire them. We do have people that have come back, and we do have some new staff, but by and large, some had gotten other jobs because they didn't want to wait, or some other dynamic occurred. We're not quite sure about the federal dollars that were afforded people on unemployment and things like that, if that delayed some people making a choice to come and work. But we have had some very dedicated people, by the way, work for us. But so we're still trying to fill jobs. And of course, if anybody's watching and still interested in summer employment, we'd be more than happy to entertain an application.
Ron Olson with us, the Chief of Parks and Recreation Division at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, or the DNR, as many of us refer to it in the state of Michigan. In terms of onboarding and training this staff, I'm sure there's a lot more that goes into it now than maybe in the past, as you're also taking into account COVID-19 guidelines and safety procedures on site at all these various different parks and with their different amenities.
Yes, it's made it exceedingly difficult, because typically when you have everybody, the core staff all hired, it's easier to have orientations and develop consistent messages. We do have, we've developed some video types of training and orientation information, so that as people have onboarded, that they can get the similar message. But also the protocols regarding the COVID situation and the proper cleaning techniques and the PPE, the personal protection equipment, and how to use that and to wear it. And they are required to go through all of that and demonstrate that they have read and understood the material, because we certainly want to make sure that staff are fully informed and follow the right guidelines for their safety and so forth. But we do have all the proper equipment according to the CDC, and staff are required to wear the masks, and gloves where appropriate, or shields, depending on the activity that they're engaged with, or engagement with the public. And we've positioned things in such a way that when we do check campers in and things like that, we can try to keep folks outside, and we do have proper panels and screens so that we can protect not only the user but the staff.
Ron Olson with us. He's the Chief of Parks and Recreation Division at the Michigan Department of Natural Resources. With us on the Oakland County Megacast across our family of TV and radio stations. Ron, as people are returning to the parks and more services have become available in the last few weeks, what are some things that maybe are still unavailable, certain facilities, certain activities that are not permitted at our state parks, so that people who are going to our state parks to do a variety of different activities know what they can and cannot engage in?
Well, the drinking fountains, sounds like it's not that big of a deal, but those are all closed, and some people depend on those to get water, and we don't have that because that's something that's difficult because of the nature of a drinking fountain. But we've tried to encourage people to bring their own water supplies and things like that, especially on these hot days, to be equipped on their own. We have opened up many of the facilities. There's a few that have been curtailed. It took us a while to get the interpretive centers back going and gathering spots. We still have places like on Belle Isle where we have the aquarium and the conservatory. Those are still closed, and many of our indoor venues are still closed because of the dynamics of indoor gatherings. But the outdoor areas, for the most part, are available, including playgrounds. We're just having people use their common sense and try to avoid that. In some areas, we don't have, we haven't had up till more recently, like kayak and canoe rentals and things like that people are used to, but those are evolving and some of those are becoming available. So it's been an evolution of things where we have opened things up, but there's still not everything is completely open, but most facilities are. But again, we're encouraging people to take their precautions and bring hand sanitizers and things like that.
Ron, there's been a lot of talk about hypotheticals with the increase in cases and some concerns being arisen about the future here in Michigan in regards to battling the COVID-19 pandemic and what a second shutdown, so to speak, would look like. In the case of our state parks, if regulations were to be pulled back, what would that look like at our state parks? How would that affect our state parks going forward?
Well, I think that we were an essential service from the beginning, and we did have restricted access to places where people could gather, and we had minimum staffing and eliminated indoor bathrooms and all of those sorts of things, and defaulted back to just basic sanitary situations where we were asking people to, if they had refuse or trash, to take it out with them or dispose it in a dumpster. And we eliminated trash cans and things like that, and to try to provide minimal services and to minimize contact of our staff with the kinds of normal things would happen. So as we've opened things back up and we opened up our bathrooms and things like that, if things did retreat back, we do know that parks are outdoor experiences, and the predominance of what we do is outdoors. So that takes away the situation regarding indoor spaces. But if things ratcheted back, we'd have to take a look at the indoor things and any of the other gathering spots. And it could be that some of those spaces like fishing piers and things like that might get curtailed and be closed back down again to access. But the camping by its nature is the sites are separated and things like that. So it's not like a gathering of people that would come to a big event. And speaking of events, that right now in the lower part of the lower peninsula, most of the lower peninsula is limited to 100 people that socially distance at any gathering. And then in the Traverse City zone or region in the UP, it's 250. But if things go forward, it could be that events that are planned for August, anticipating the fact that that number would either remain the same, or if the anticipation was that perhaps the zones would move to more open things up. But right now, it could be, if it went the other direction, it could be that 100 and the 250 numbers that we're we've talked about where the limits are based on the region could be ratcheted back, which then would curtail other kinds of activities. So there's a lot of different things that could happen, but right now we're staying with the orders and complying with them as best we can. The other dynamic that occurred was the requirement of the mask to be worn indoors, and now it's required with a potential fine for violators and things like that. So those are things we're trying to message strongly to ensure that people do their part when they come, regardless of where it is, to wear that mask indoors, period, unless there's somebody that has an exemption. But the majority of people, we want them to do that, as does of course, our staff, and that's a very key part of the current situation.
Ron, anything else you'd like to touch on today before we let you go?
No, just all I can say is we ask people to enjoy themselves outdoors, but do it right and do it responsibly. And we know it's a little inconvenient, but it'll help keeping us from going backwards. And if everybody does their part, that's great. And second of all, if anybody is looking for a summer job outdoors in a park, to let us know. And we do have openings scattered around the state.
Well, Ron, thank you very much for being with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ron Olson from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We'll take a quick break, and when we return, we'll talk about how the recent executive orders from the governor are affecting our retailers statewide. That and more coming up. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of TV and radio stations.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jonae Caldoon. I'm the Chief Medical Executive for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. The people who are at highest risk of getting severely ill from COVID-19 are the elderly and those with chronic medical conditions. That includes people with heart disease, diabetes, COPD, or those who have compromised immune systems. People who are in those categories should right now be staying at home as much as possible and not going out if it is not essential. If you fit into one of those categories, those are the things you should do. And if you have a family member who fits into one of those categories, you should be checking in on them and making sure they are following those guidelines. There's something everyone can do to protect the community from COVID-19.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in our studios here at Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we are broadcasting live on Birmingham Area Municipal Access and 88.1 WBFH The Biff. In addition, today we are on Ronnie Dahl's Facebook page, bringing her audience from her previous journalistic efforts in the local area in with us today. So if you're tuning in for the first time, we welcome you to the program and hope you'll continue to tune in to our future programs. And Ronnie, of course, thank you for putting us today on your Facebook page.
You're welcome. I will say I have noticed that a lot of our guests are giving us new information and providing breaking news situations, and the mainstream media are starting to pick up some of the things that we are covering and some of our guests that we have been speaking with. So that means we're doing something right, Tyler.
I think so too, and I think that one of the wonderful things about this particular program is the ability for us to bring these people in as guests and talk more extensively with them, so that these stories within these stories within these stories that maybe get buried in the regular news cycle because it's so much of a hustle they end up being put on the forefront in some way, and they get that attention that they need to have and they deserve to have, and that allows these stories to get out there further. So I think that the efforts that we're putting forth are really helping with a lot of these people's stories, and we're glad to do that, and we're going to continue to do that for the foreseeable future. So talking about a lot of these big stories in the local area. Of course, the biggest story this week so far has been the enactment of the governor's recent executive order requiring mask wearing in public places and putting stringent restrictions and regulations on local businesses in order to enforce that. Joining us now to talk about that from the Michigan Retailers Association is their Director of Government Affairs, Amy Drumm. Amy, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me again.
How are you? How have you been?
Doing well. It's nice to be back. I'm in my office, which feels good, and I think we're moving in a good direction, so that's exciting.
Yes, definitely. We're talking to you under a lot better circumstances than the first time we talked to you. You're back in the office. How long have you been back in the office?
It's been a couple weeks now. Still doing a little bit from home, but mostly able to be here and be distant from my coworkers, so it's a good, safe environment, and we're wearing masks. We're in public, in the kitchen or in the hallways, and seems to be going really well.
And it's always good to have some return to normalcy in any way that you can get it, especially in the times that we're in right now. So in terms of the retail businesses, the state of the retail businesses in the state of Michigan, how are they doing right now? A lot of them have been reopened for several weeks or for a couple of months at this point in full capacity. And of course, they've been doing curbside, they've been doing delivery throughout the course of the pandemic. How are our retailers in the state of Michigan holding up at this point in time?
It's been a lot of change for retail. We're very glad that we're now back to a point where all of their doors are open and you can have customers come in and shop like they're used to. We do have those different accommodations. You have more curbside shopping, more online shopping, more different ways of experiencing the store than people were used to in the past. But the new issue obviously is the mask piece and the added complexity for retail workers to try to enforce that at stores. And so they're concerned about that. I mean, I think we had gone a few weeks without any bad news, which was really refreshing for them. And now we're back to a point where they have concerns about how to handle this and customers who are unhappy about it on either side of the issue.
And with that in mind, what are the retailers doing to put the enforcement of this rule in place? I mean, I saw yesterday, I just happened to go to one of the local grocery stores in the area after I left the office here yesterday, and they had one door open. They usually have two entrances. They had one entrance open that at both of their sub entrances after you enter, they have someone standing at the door to make sure you're wearing a mask. And that may not be the case at every single retailer where they will have someone that they can put dedicated at that front door. So how are they adjusting to this? Are they able to adjust to it? Or is it going to be a struggle for them initially to get the ball rolling on this?
So it's definitely going to be a challenge. A lot of people don't have a typical greeter at the door. So this is a new effort to put somebody by the door. We've talked to the state and they said that you don't necessarily have to have somebody standing right at the door to have an employee who's nearby and can monitor it and, approach somebody or just gently remind them when they walk in that they need to put a mask on. But retailers feel their goal here and their main effort is to clearly communicate what the rules are to customers. They do that by putting up signs and by offering those gentle reminders that this is a requirement, you must do this to enter. But they're not going to put themselves in harm's way of actually trying to confront somebody or physically stop somebody from entering. At that point, they will get law enforcement involved if they need to. But we're hoping we will see very few of those incidents. That's the goal.
Yeah, ideally, we're all hoping that most people will have cooler heads prevail and not outwardly obstruct the regular business of any retailer or any other business, frankly, in the local area, as they're just trying to follow the rules and keep their business going. But in that case, it does present a little bit of a dilemma from a business standpoint. We've talked with this with different chambers of commerce and different other businesses in the local area as well, that you want to enforce these laws, A, because it's the law and your business can be put in jeopardy by not following it, but you also have the other side where you don't want to be denying business, especially in the time where it is so critical to have new customers coming in, repeat customers coming in. How are our retailers able to, or going about balancing that and working with local police departments maybe on enforcement so that they're able to continue to bring these people in as consumers to their business and not sacrificing that.
Absolutely. And the other point, too, I think that wasn't mentioned is retailers want to make sure their employees are safe. So we hope that people will follow the rules and wear masks. We do think that's an important piece of this puzzle to keep retail doors open. We follow the safeguards, we can all continue to shop safely. But in terms of enforcing the actual requirement that's under this new executive order, we do have retailers who've reached out to their local police partners and law enforcement partners to make sure that they're aware of what they expect from them. When should they call? What kind of response will they get? And we've been really pleased, I think, so far in terms of the response we've gotten from law enforcement of they absolutely want to support retail workers and keep them safe. They don't want them getting into a dangerous situation. And they've already been deployed out to stores in a couple instances to kind of keep that peace as best they can and handle these situations. So we're hoping it'll remain at a level that they can continue to do that and it won't be a burden either on law enforcement or on retailers. But without law enforcement to help back up our retailers, I don't know where we would be. So we're very grateful to all of their efforts.
Amy, I have a retail background, and I know sometimes that profit margin can be very slim. So businesses have already taken a hit. Do you think a lot of them will be able to survive outside of the big box stores if we have a second surge in the fall?
That's a great question. I think it depends on how we react to it. I think we learned a lot from this first few months of COVID and what we can do and what we can't do safely. We haven't seen a ton of outbreaks or really any big outbreaks that have been tied back to a retail store or retail workers, which is really encouraging. We think that retail is a very safe activity, and the state has even put it on the very low tier of risky activities you can engage in. So we're hopeful that if we go back to a point, heaven forbid, where we need to shut things down again, that retail can remain open and all retail doors can, as long as we're following these safeguards we have in place. I think they work. But to your point, the profit margins are very slim for many retailers, and they've had a lot of added costs with the extra cleaning and extra staff they've needed to fulfill online orders and additional safeguards they've had to put in place, monitoring aisles or monitoring the door for capacity and now for masks. That's a lot of cost. And I think what we've seen from our members is that a lot of them are going to try and ride this out as long as they can. They want to remain good members of the community and good members of the economy and contributing. But I think we will see more drop off potentially next year. Once we get past the Christmas season, if they're not able to recoup their numbers and the costs just keep going up, they may not be able to make it.
Amy Drumm with us. She's the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Retailers Association. A lot of lessons were learned early on in the pandemic, those first couple of weeks, definitely those first couple of months, as businesses were shut down and retailers had to adjust to continue to push commerce out and about in the community without having their doors open. What of those lessons are still currently in play right now, being utilized? How is that benefiting these businesses? And how are those lessons that they learned early on in the pandemic helping to prepare them for the worst case scenario that we go back into a shutdown situation?
So we have absolutely advised all of our members that if they didn't have a robust online presence before, that they should be looking into that very seriously now. We don't know if we're going to be forced to go back into a situation where they're going to have to depend on online sales or curbside sales. So that is a lesson that we've encouraged most to really heed and look forward into working to achieve that goal. And the other is to make sure that they're communicating really clearly with their customers. You can't communicate enough. You want to make sure they understand how and where and what to expect when they come to the store. Where's the curbside parking? Where do I pull up? How do I look at your online items? What are your hours? Have they changed? So we want to make sure people are communicating more and more and more. And then one of the really interesting lessons we heard from a number of retailers was that as there were some supply challenges and panic shopping, pulled things off the shelves in a number of stores, some stores that didn't get a lot of traffic were seeing increases in traffic because they were able to keep their shelves stocked. And so we've seen a shift, I think, in where people were maybe always used to shopping at a certain store and they went to somewhere different because they were able to find the items they were looking for there. So that's benefited some at the cost of others. It's just been an interesting experience, and we've encouraged people to work closely with their wholesalers and their suppliers so that they can try to keep things stocked, or hopefully we won't go back to a situation with that panic shopping again. Again, it's interesting lessons in terms of communicating and building relationships with local law enforcement and with your suppliers. All of those things are important and should be done going to the future, regardless of whether or not we have an unfortunate situation again like this spring.
So while some businesses were devastated, it seems like other businesses thrived during this. So looking ahead at the retail world, what businesses have kind of come out of this on the other side? Because one that comes to mind for me, sign companies. I drive down the road and I see everyone has to have a new sign, right? Talking about your curbside pickup or the hours. So what businesses do you think are going to boom coming out of this?
Well, from what we've seen so far for retail, it's been all those essential services. So your grocery, your pharmacy, your hardware, clothing is also essential especially for kids who are growing out of items and need new shoes or new clothes. So I think we'll continue to see those stores and those retailers do well. It's been interesting because we've also seen the boom in more technology. So anybody who's selling computers or any kind of internet connectivity devices, that is certainly doing really well. But as you mentioned, there's more requirements of putting up signs and communicating. So I think the things that we'll see while that aren't retail are those web designers, anybody who's making connectivity and helping to increase the ability to do different kinds of shopping and different experiences that don't involve physically being on site or touching a lot of items. There's a lot of different ways you can do that. And Zoom is certainly a big one too that's doing really well, obviously.
Yeah, I had never heard of Zoom before all of this. So we're all getting an education. And I would think like pajama companies and athletic wear, those types of companies are doing well because we're not dressing up anymore. I mean, my dry cleaning bill went from $200 a week to $0, which is great. So one thing I do have to ask you about, though, is what is going on with the deposit returns? Can you talk about that at all? Some stores you can do it, some stores you can do it on certain days or they reach a limit. Why is there a delay on returning your deposits?
That's a great question. So the deposit system that we have in Michigan is somewhat complicated. And I think this pandemic has really brought that to light, that this maybe isn't the most efficient way we can recycle our bottles and cans. What's happening though at the store level is not all stores are taking things or have always been able to take things back the same way. The stores that have those reverse vending machines where you put the cans back into the container and it reads them through, those are the ones that are required to take back cans and bottles now. And only if they're really in the front of the store or near kind of in a separate room. So they're segregated out and you're not intermixing bottles and cans into the entire store if it's at the back. The problem we're seeing, though, is there's just a huge volume of cans and bottles out there. And the system doesn't just end with retail. It's not that the bottles and cans go back to retail and retail, deals with it themselves. The distributors pick those containers back up from retail. And so they're part of that process. And they have capacity limits of what they can handle. And so when the retail store hits their capacity in terms of how much they can physically take in and put into the bins that they have to wait for the distributor to come pick those up and empty them and give them empty bins to take back more. So we're seeing some real differences in how that process works. The state has put allowing retailers to enforce that strict limit of 250 cans a day per person. That was already in statute, but the reason they're enforcing that more strictly now is to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to take things back. There was a concern, you had a lot of those fundraising drives out there that were collecting cans and bottles for good causes, but they would just overwhelm a retail system with the number that they had, and then nobody else would be able to take back their bottles and cans. So we thought the limits in allowing retailers to enforce that would give everybody the same opportunity to return some, and they may have to wait for a second or third trip back, but it's better to move some of those out of the system and get us moving forward. But it's going to take a number of months and maybe even a year to fully get through that backlog of cans that are out there, and more keep going out. It's summer and people are enjoying beverages, and it's just a continual process. Now, I will note, though, you can recycle them, so you can forgo the deposit and drop them off in your recycling bin or at a recycling center if you don't want to have to wait in the line. And that's much easier.
Amy Drumm with us. She is the Vice President of Government Affairs at the Michigan Retailers Association. Amy, during the summer months especially, retail is one of those business sectors that sees a lot of new staff come on, especially part-time staff, to help shoulder the load of greater business and more foot traffic into the stores. Even during the pandemic, staffing is still a major issue for a lot of companies, as they've had layoffs over the course of the pandemic and people maybe aren't coming back, or they're really struggling to find new talent to come in that's eager to go back to work. Is that something that our retailers in the state of Michigan, especially in southeastern Michigan, in our local area, are struggling with right now, or is staffing something that they have maybe under control?
Staffing has been a challenge since the start of COVID. It's certainly, we saw a number of people who would normally go into work and be able to work a full shift that had to stay home with their kids or if they were sick. And so they had a lot of turnover, even at the stores that were open the entire time. And as people were trying to come back, you had the same challenges of people who weren't ready to come back, or people who, no longer could work or chose not to work anymore. So we are still seeing that. There typically are a lot of retail openings. So if you're looking for a job, retail is a great place to look for an opportunity. But it's definitely seen a lot of turnover, which is, again, complicated by the fact that there's so many new rules and requirements that follow. It's a lot to get somebody up to speed on.
Elaborate on that, because there are more regulations in place, there are more rules in place that are different from the typical retail situation. How much training do people have to undergo? How much orientation do people have to undergo once they do get those retail jobs before they're allowed to start?
So it depends on the store, and it depends on how much retail experience you're coming in with. If you've worked in another store and you've got a lot of experience, you may not have a whole lot of training to go through other than the COVID-specific requirements of these are our cleaning methods and these are our policies and procedures to keep the employees safe and customers safe. But there's definitely, every week or every couple weeks we're having new rules come out, so that does require more training. So it's an ongoing effort. It's not necessarily just the initial training when you come in, because we've seen so many changes. They've had to continually communicate that with their employees and get them to buy into the retailer's plan to keep everybody safe.
Amy, by and large right now, what are, in terms of staffing, what are retailers looking for in terms of their staffers?
I think it's across the board. I haven't heard specific needs from our retail members, but I know that there are a lot of opportunities out there in all the different positions. So if you're looking to be an entry-level employee, if you're a high school student and just looking to get into the job market, there's definitely opportunities for you. If you were looking for a higher level position and you have experience, I'm sure that we have retailers who are looking for those folks as well. Just look around, look on those job sites. A lot of them have posted things there, and I'd have to get back to you on more specifics, but I think it's good news that we haven't heard a real drop off or need. I know that they definitely have positions open and available, but I don't know that we've had a huge problem in having them fill them. It's just kind of a rotating door of people coming in and out and lots of turnover, which isn't different for retail. There's a lot of turnover in general because people often use this as their first job and they learn experience and move on.
Are you seeing that some of the retail outlets are going part-time or, 32 hours a week rather than bringing on full-time employees?
So with the reduced hours, there's certainly some changes in what we're seeing at the retail stores. They're required to reduce their hours in some effort to do more cleaning. And that depends on whether the employees are doing the cleaning or if they're having another firm come in to do the cleaning in the evenings. But there are more reduced hours across the board in retail as required by some of these executive orders. So there definitely are changes on that front. But on the other side of that, there's more opportunity, I think, to pick up hours for other employees. So while the store may have fewer hours that they're open, I think you have more opportunity to fill the hours you wish to work at a retail store.
Amy, anything else you'd like to touch on, or anything else that's important for us to know about before we let you go today?
Just like to stress again that, we really want people to do the right thing and wear a mask to help protect retail employees. Please remember to be kind to them and that they are not the ones that have put this policy in place. They're just trying to enforce it the best they can. And if you can wear a mask, you will save them a lot of stress and worry when you go into the store. And we just want to make sure we can keep retail doors open. So if you need to follow these safeguards, please just do that. It's much easier to wear a mask than to shut things back down for a few more months and be stuck at home.
Well, Amy, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. Amy Drumm with us, the Vice President of Government Affairs of the Michigan Retailers Association, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And a lot going on with our retailers in the state of Michigan as they're trying to continue to battle through this situation and figure out the future, but also deal with the regulations that are in place, with the continued uncertainty of our times and of their current industry at this point in time, and dealing with all of those different factors and all the moving parts that go into those is extremely challenging.
You know what, again, one of the reasons why I like this show so much is being able to speak to people at length. When you're a field reporter, you typically will have these conversations, but you have to limit your story to a minute 15. So a lot of this doesn't make it into the public for regular people to know about. So being able to have all the facets of it, just the simple thing of returning our bottles. I know it's frustrating. You walk into the store, you have a huge bag of bottles or cans that you want to return, and they say, no, we can't take them today. You're frustrated, right? But understanding this cycle and all the facets that go into that process, the next time I go to return them, and if they won't take them, I'll think back to her conversation. I'll be, I learned something today. This is why they're not taking all of them, and this is, the reason behind it. So, again, it's one of the reasons why we like this show so much, is that we are able to speak with a lot of people from our community and our businesses at length about why things are happening the way they are happening right now. Because under COVID-19, there is pretty much not one facet of our lives that has not been changed or touched by this pandemic.
And on that note, it's a matter of also a walk a mile in someone else's shoes, where we're talking to Amy Drumm about how retailers are affected by what's currently going on, how they've been affected by this entire pandemic as a whole. And you don't really get that perspective without talking to them at length. You can know that, okay, retailers are struggling a bit here. Retailers are understaffed a bit here, and they're looking for more people. Retailers have had to shut down and modify and pivot, and whatever terminology you want to use for it. But to get those inside stories and hear that they're looking for people and they're kind of struggling to find people, and they're reducing hours because payroll is expensive and you are trying to keep your business afloat. And like you had mentioned in the interview, profit margins are relatively low for retailers, and you get that perspective in talking to them and in listening to those stories. And maybe that gives the people that are going into these retailers and are a little more apprehensive about the mask wearing laws to be like, okay, I'll wear a mask and I'll just try to keep my time in the store short, get in, find what I'm looking for, ask for help if I need it, get what I need, and leave so I can limit the amount of time I'm in a mask, instead of going in saying, well, if I got to wear a mask in that store, I'm just not going to go to the store. I'm going to order online and, whatever with you. I think it gives people a perspective of they're doing their best, they understand your perspective, and they're hoping you understand theirs, so that when it comes to the point where you're going into those stores, you know the full scope as well.
I think what will serve us all well is every time you go into a store, you encounter someone, if you do not have a mask on, they ask you to put one on or to leave. Just remember, or if you think, hey, that could be my brother, that could be my sister, that could be my daughter, how would you treat them in that situation? So kindness always wins, and I do think after yesterday, we are going to see this become a bigger and bigger issue going through the summer months especially. And when you're addressing that it's not just required for indoor spaces but also crowded outdoor spaces, I think this is going to continue to be an issue that is not going to go away as long as this executive order is in place. So we're going to see more of these cases. There was the incident in the state of Michigan, not locally, where the guy pulled a gun in Meyer, or not a gun, I'm sorry, a knife on an employee in Meyer because he was requested to put a mask on. Let's just remember, violence is not going to be the answer. And these are regular people that are making, not a lot of money, and they've been essential workers basically on the front lines of this entire pandemic. They're putting their life in danger and at risk of getting this disease, and their families to come to work to serve you, to get you what you need. So if you're not comfortable putting a mask on, and this isn't a tirade or anything, it's just, I know a lot of people don't believe in it and they believe it's an infringement on your rights. It's okay to believe that, but don't take it out on the employee that's making $10, $12 an hour to be able to serve you so you can get the necessities that you need.
I don't like wearing the masks either. They're annoying. They make my face really really warm. But
Your glasses always fog
my
up?
glasses are fogging up too. No matter what measures I take, I run them under hot water. Then I got wet glasses too. It's not fun for anybody to be wearing this. But we're trying to do our part to help each other out and I take it as more of a situation of the longer I deal with this annoyance, the longer I tolerate this annoyance is probably a better way to go for it. The longer I tolerate this annoyance, the quicker we're able to get through this crisis and hopefully get out on the other end of it. Because if we were all following these guidelines up until this point, if we were all taking things seriously from the get-go and never let up, we may or may not have been out of it at this point, but we'd be a lot closer, I think, than we currently are.
I will say, so Tyler, because I am a chick, so I want to get one of those bedazzle kits from, this is way, I'm older than you, but from 6th, 7th grade, they had these bedazzle kits. So get a mask and bedazzle it and have fun with it. And I love the mask. It was the prototype from the company that Erica went to visit a couple weeks ago, where it actually had an LED in it. So while you talked, it moved. I can't wait for something like that to come out, because if we have to wear a mask, have some fun with it. But I will say it'd be really nice if they could come up with a mask that doesn't wear off your makeup on the bottom half of your face. I know, Tyler, guys don't have to worry about that, but it's kind of an issue with girls. You take them off and the makeup's in them and your lipstick's all over them. Yeah. But it's not so nice. You're going through your makeup a little bit quicker. But if you're going to wear a mask, have fun with it. Make it a statement. Bedazzle it.
Yeah, I don't know, it's a little more of a pointed statement when the governor mentioned something along those lines at her most recent press conference on COVID-19 response, where she had said, even if you are putting a mask on and you're putting a mask on that says, "I hate masks," that's fine as long as you're wearing a mask. I mean, you can make a little bit of a statement with it. You can be a little out there with it. You can show your apprehension to it even when you're wearing a mask, as long as you're wearing it and you're participating in these safety measures that are being put in place that allow these businesses to stay open, allow commerce to continue to happen. If you're really focused on wanting to maintain a strong economy while we're dealing with this, keeping these businesses open is key, and keeping people masked up so that they're reducing their ability to spread the virus is going to be absolutely critical.
So I will admit that there have been times where I've been out in public and I get choked up thinking this is where we are, because it's not so much that people are wearing a mask. I feel like there's a fear in their eyes, and people aren't, looking at one another or talking, or, that just general niceness that comes with being social or being in public. I like to talk to everyone, by the way, so if you ever see me, you probably know that about me. So I feel like when people are wearing a mask, it's kind of like no one's looking at one another and they're not communicating with strangers. So I think it's taken away some of that. That's why I'm saying, let's make it fun. Have a fun mask.
Exactly.
Make me laugh.
Have a little fun in your discomfort, and maybe that'll make the experience a little more enjoyable while you're annoyed and while you're warm and while your glasses are fogging up all the time as you're wearing your masks, and doing your part as well. You can feel good about doing your part in this fight in the state of Michigan. We were doing so well for so long. We've kind of taken a step back. We're still not nearly in any kind of situation as severe as what we're seeing in places like Arizona and in Florida and in Texas and even in California. But we were heading in a really good direction. We started to take a turn backwards, and hopefully now we're taking a turn back toward the direction we were going in. And maybe in a few weeks we'll get into August and we'll be in phase 5, or we'll get into September and we'll be near the end of this. Putting forth those efforts to follow these safety measures, it's good for everyday people. It's good for our economy. It's good for our businesses that have been struggling to stay open. And it's generally just good for the public health, so we definitely will encourage you to continue to do just that. We're going to take a short break. It is the top of the hour. You are watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on Civic Center TV and Birmingham Area Municipal Access on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. In addition, we are on the radio on 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, West Bloomfield, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and on 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. That is 88.1 WBFH, the BIF, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District, with operations out of Bloomfield Hills High School under the leadership day-to-day of Station Manager Ron Whittables. The Oakland County Megacast returns after this quick break.
Hi, my name is Kurt Lawson, and I'm the Public Information Officer for West Bloomfield Township. We wanted to reach out to you, our older adults, to provide information that you may find useful during this difficult time. We want to ensure you that West Bloomfield Town Hall, our Waters and Utility Department, West Bloomfield Parks, and our police and fire departments continue to work hard on your behalf. Information and resources can be found on the Township website, the police Facebook and Twitter, or call West Bloomfield Parks COVID-19 Help Hotline. Please remember to keep your social distance of at least 6 feet, wear facial coverings when you leave your home, and wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap. These precautions will help keep you safe during these difficult times.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast on a family of community TV and radio stations all throughout the Oakland County area on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99 on Civic Center TV and Birmingham Area Municipal Access. In addition, we are on 89.3 Lakes FM and 88.1 The Biff out of Bloomfield Hills. And today we're on the Facebook page of our co-host Ronnie Dahl, joining us today on the program, our Facebook partner, and we welcome her fans on Facebook for joining us today on the Oakland County Megacast. If it's your first time tuning in, thank you. We hope to have you back each and every day from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on a family of TV and radio stations. We invite you to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter and Instagram. We are Civic Center TV. You can also follow Lakes FM, 89.3 Lakes FM, on our social media as well. And feel free to visit our website at civiccentertv.com for more details on everything that we do here at Civic Center TV and more information on the Oakland County Megacast. You could go to our page at civiccentertv.com/megacast, learn about our partnering stations, and find all of our full episodes, clips, and interviews from each and every day's shows. And on top of that, updated news stories every day on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. And of course, you'll be able to watch us live any time of the day, but especially from 10 a.m. to 12 noon during the Megacast, and see everything that we're doing on the show each and every day as it's happening in crisp, high definition on our website on civiccentertv.com/watch-live. And to hear all this new information we're coming in with each and every day from around the Oakland County area, including some of our retailers. We have our field reporter Erica Jones out at a local retailer in the Oakland County area as Governor Whitmer's mask wearing law is now in effect via her recent executive order that went into effect on Monday this week. Erica, where are you at today?
Hi, Tyler. I'm at Rear Ends in Bloomfield Hills on Telegraph and Maple. They also have a location on Orchard Lake Road in West Bloomfield, and I'm here with their owner, Ariana, talking just about this new policy and how they've implemented it. They actually were very strict about mask wearing even before, but, obviously things change when you have a more tight microscope on you. So we're going to talk with her about how they've been making sure that everyone adheres to it. So hi, Ariana. Thank you so much for talking with us. So just tell us a little bit about how you're implementing this policy and how it's going so far, how customers are complying with it.
You know, kind of same as we were before. So as soon as we were able to reopen for appointments, all of our signage said, please wear a mask to enter. You have to wear a mask to enter, sanitize when you come in, and we're still limiting the capacity to 3 people in the Bloomfield Hills location other than staff, and then 4 in our West Bloomfield location. So just same, you just have to, if someone doesn't have it, you just have to say, you go grab your mask. We do have extra masks on hand in case someone forgot theirs. We're also selling masks.
Yeah, and I know you said it's sometimes tricky when people are going into dressing rooms and taking off their shirt for a second to try one on. So have you had an issue with that, with people then forgetting to put it back on, or how have you dealt with that?
Definitely. I would say that's been the hardest part. You know, someone pulls a shirt over their head, their mask comes off, and then they walk out of the fitting room without it on. I try and give them a beat because I find that most people, when they see a mask on, are like, oh, I forgot my mask. And usually someone will run in, run back out, run back to the fitting room and grab it. Now, if it happens the next time they're out, I'm a little faster to say, can you please remember your mask? Because I understand they're not necessarily taking it off to be dismissive of the policy, dismissive of safety. It's just something that happened. So I don't want to jump down someone's throat, but also if it seems that they're then getting more lax or disrespectful, I'll reach out about the mask a little faster.
Yeah, and I know when we were talking earlier, you said that you think this new policy that our governor has will actually help the situation, because then it's not as much specifically, oh, well, this business makes me wear a mask and this one doesn't. So how do you think that will affect your business?
I mean, I think it's great. I think the governor has done a great job, and I'm all for the interest of general safety of my staff, my customers, and the community at large. And I think as business owners, we're helping stop the spread by implementing the rules. And I think now it's not me saying you have to wear a mask to stay here. It's me saying, you know what the governor and safety officials say you need to, and nobody is worth a $500 fine. You know, we were obviously impacted during the closure. We survived, we came out fine, but I'm also not I don't have the capacity to take a $500 fine every day for someone who's not being compliant.
Right, of course. And until this new order was implemented, as a business owner, did you have any customers that got nasty with you, or, you know, were upset when they walked in without a mask and you wouldn't let them shop?
I only had 2 instances, you know, the entire time. It was, about 6 weeks? I only had 2 instances where people seemed to roll their eyes or give a little bit of pushback. Now, one person put it on, the other didn't, and was quite rude and dismissive and made it really difficult. But I would say from the stories that we've been hearing, 2 instances out of so many people being compliant is not that bad.
All right, well, that's great. So it seems like your customers are being very respectful of the policies and things are going very well over here. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your business or your policies moving forward?
You know what? We've just been doing our best to provide a safe environment. So we're cleaning and sanitizing general use areas. We're steaming our clothes after they've been tried on and quarantining them overnight. Nobody's guiding us in best practices as far as the clothes are concerned. So we're following all the laws that are coming down towards us, but we're trying to do our best to keep everyone safe.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you talking with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Tyler, there is our story from Rear End in Bloomfield Hills, and they also have a location on Orchard Lake Road in West Bloomfield.
Erica, when you entered the store, I know you called in beforehand and arranged to be there, but when you do enter the store, what's the experience like to make sure that you are wearing a mask? If you've been to other retailers in the area over the last day or so, or other stores that have been enforcing this law, what has your experience been like out in the field in that regard?
Yeah, well, like I said, here when you walk in, they do have a little tray where they have masks if someone needs one, and they have hand sanitizer to make sure that everyone's putting on. But again, I think our small businesses really have already been doing a great job of making sure everyone has been wearing masks before this policy was implemented. So to be completely honest, I'm not sure if that much has changed in that regard. I think the biggest difference we're going to see is larger corporations that before their corporate was not, specifically implementing those policies, and now they have to. But I think small businesses have been doing a great job, and they're going to continue doing that even more so now.
Well, Erica, thank you very much for that report.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate it. Erica Jones out in the field with us reporting from a local retailer as they began yesterday having to enforce the governor's new mask-wearing order, put that in place in order to require retailers and other businesses, any indoor facility really, to require mask wearing on site or refuse service or entry to people that refuse to wear their masks. And really nice system that they have there. I like what Erica said about them having a tray out with some spare masks that people can wear if they, have a situation like we've talked about many times before, where oops, I forgot to wear my mask when I left the home, or I left it at home, or I left it in my car and I'm already in the store and I really am I'm across the parking lot. There's an option there for you so that there's no question about it. You can wear a mask when you go in the store, and they don't have to necessarily ask you to leave. They can say, okay, well, next time bring a mask in, but here's a mask for you. We have clean masks here that are disposable that you can wear when you're entering these businesses.
It happens to all of us. In fact, today, I typically wear like the neck scarves, and I washed all of them yesterday, so I forgot to throw one or grab one. And so today I was like, oh, I don't have a mask. And usually I keep an extra one in my car, but I probably wore it somewhere, and who knows where it is now. Didn't replace it. So when I came into work today, I was like, oh, I have to grab one of the masks that's here. So it's good to have extras for everyone, not just your employees, but for the guests that are coming into your store. And it is a good way. I know it's an additional expense for retailers, but it is another good way to ensure that you can still service that customer so that you're not losing the business. And a lot of it is about the way you talk to them and just make it fun. Hey, I'm sorry, you need a mask. We have one here. And, you want me to draw a smiley face on it for you? What do you want? Or do you know what you need? And I'll bring it to your curb, whichever one they feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of people that are just going to be making courtesy adjustments as this continues to go on, and at least in the building phase of this new law, as people are readjusting and figuring out how they're going to go about doing it. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll return. We'll go over we'll review today's top headlines, and then later on in the show we'll talk to local health officials and the Oakland County Sheriff. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast on our family of TV and radio stations. Ronnie and I will return after this break.
Michigan, we're calling on you to save lives. Don't ignore it. Don't let it go to voicemail. It's urgent. In fact, it's critical. Because if you've been in close contact with someone who tests positive for COVID-19, you may have been exposed to the virus. And you could get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department. So please answer the call to learn how to protect yourself, your family, and friends. We're calling on you to stop the spread of COVID-19, to make it safe to reopen businesses and help Michigan move forward. So if you get a call from My COVID Help or your local health department, you may have been exposed to someone with COVID-19. To protect us all, answer the call. Learn more at michigan.gov/containcovid. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Hello, I'm Dr. Betty Chu, Chief Quality Officer at Henry Ford Health System, and I'm with Wright Lassiter, Henry Ford Health System's CEO, to talk about coronavirus.
In uncertain times, it's natural to have questions. So I'm going to ask Dr. Chu to answer some of the common ones. First, why can't I visit my grandma to see if she's okay?
Because the elderly are at a higher risk for complications with this disease, and you could inadvertently infect her.
If I'm healthy, why can't I go out with my friends?
The larger the crowd you're exposed to, the higher the chance you could get infected and infect others.
If I have symptoms, why do I have to seek care?
While the disease isn't dangerous for most people, for others it can be. We need to understand how serious your case is, because the right choices save lives. For more information, visit henryford.com or call 313-874-1055.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards, back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart, keep wearing a mask in public, and if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast alongside Ronnie Dahl. I'm Tyler Kieft in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, also on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99. We're on Birmingham Area Municipal Access in Birmingham, Bingham Farms, Beverly Hills, and the Village of Franklin. In addition, we are on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, with service out of Bloomfield Hills High School. That is, of course, under the leadership of station manager Ron Whittables and their student staff that does excellent work, excellent community radio all throughout the year and throughout the school year. They're still doing some programs remotely. They have been over the course of this pandemic, and students are doing a fantastic job at the Biff, and it's as an alum of the Biff, cannot be prouder to be associated with that group of students who are continuing to bring that legacy onward, forward, and doing excellent work, even during a school year that has brought forth so many changes and so much nuance. It's crazy to think about being a high school student and being a radio student on top of that while going through a pandemic. So we salute the Biff, we salute their students, and thank them for being with us each and every day on the Oakland County Megacast. Making our top stories today on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Small businesses hurt by COVID-19 can apply for economic recovery grants. Oakland County retail stores, restaurants, and personal service businesses such as salons and fitness centers impacted by the coronavirus pandemic can now apply beginning today for part of the $32 million Oakland Together Small Business Recovery Grant Fund. We've talked about that previously with Oakland County Executive David Coulter. The grants, which range from $2,500 to $10,000 apiece, provide an infusion of capital to support payroll expenses, rent, mortgage payments, utility expenses, or other similar payments that occur in the ordinary course of business. These funds come from the Federal CARES Act dollars allotted to Oakland County by the federal government. From Oakland County Executive David Coulter, quote, "We know many of our small businesses have reopened, but the losses they suffered while they were closed or operating at reduced capacity are significant and continue to threaten their viability." Additionally, Coulter said, we want to do all we can to help them recover and continue to provide the goods and services that are so important to our residents. Applications are online at oakgov.com/COVID/grants. That's oakgov.com/COVID/grants. We have a link to that in the article on our website on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. It'll take you right to a link that gives you information on those grants. Again, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. It's in that first article right there today. And Ronnie, these programs that are in place now, both on the federal level and on the state level, now on the county level, to provide for these small businesses. I mean, we talked earlier on in the week and even late last week with some chambers of commerce and other local businesses about small business aid coming in from state federal CARES Act dollars. This county money also going to be absolutely critical, especially now. I think we've talked a lot today, we've kind of beaten to death the mask wearing order that's now in effect from the governor's office under her new executive order that went into effect on Monday this week. With that being the case, maybe you need another person that's working part-time or a couple part-timers each day to enforce that law at your door and make sure that you're not letting people in, putting yourself in a potential liability situation. These dollars from the Oakland County government could be critical in making that happen.
And I know when I have talked with business owners in the past, they do say that the money that's coming from the grants on the local level tend to make it into their bank accounts so much quicker than on the federal level. So this is good to see that this is local. It is going to go in and help our businesses stay afloat. Of course, it is a grant. Keep in mind, it's taxpayer funded at the end of the day, but we need these businesses to stay open and to stay in business as well. One of the things I do want to let people know, speaking about small businesses, if you are a shopper like me, there is another program that is in Royal Oak. I don't know if you've heard about this, Tyler. Gift cards are being offered to help spur business in the downtown Royal Oak area. So, and it's a part of the Downtown Development Authority's program. It's a campaign. Up to $400,000 in e-gift cards are going to be given out to help support some of those those local businesses in that downtown area. So you can get a $20 gift card, you can go get coffee, you can put it towards a t-shirt or a mug or a restaurant, something of that nature. So these downtown development authorities and governments are really trying to come up with a lot of programs to help support our local businesses. And again, we benefit by, number one, having them open, and also you benefit, in this case, you can get an e-gift card to help support these businesses. Who doesn't like free money? $20 is 4 coffees at Starbucks for me.
And all these programs, too, that are being put in place, a lot of money came in from Federal CARES Act dollars. There's still potential for more coming in if the Federal HEROES Act is put into law. And it's been great to see that these local governments, even the local municipalities, when they get their federal allotments, in some cases have put forth programs to provide businesses with some extra financial aid, definitely on the county level, definitely on the state level, and even in some cases on the federal level as well. There's been a lot of programs put in place. If you're looking in the right spots, you're going to find some potential for aid for your small business, and it's good to see that the Oakland County government is continuing to work through different ways that they can help businesses going forward. They've done aid programs earlier on in the pandemic. They've continued to work with whatever funding dollars that they get coming in to continue to help our small business community, and that's been so critical, I think, to the resurgence we've seen as businesses have reopened in the Oakland County area.
Exactly. And you know, when you're out shopping too, so many times it's easy when you maybe have Amazon to just go online and look and swipe, and then it's delivered to your home. But before you do that the next time, maybe take a little bit of time to see, hey, is this offered somewhere locally? Can I get that from a business right here directly in my community? A lot of them are offering a lot of delivery services right now too, so it's another good way to support all of the companies that are in our backyards.
Other stories making news at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. 384 new coronavirus cases and 7 deaths in the state of Michigan reported on Monday. Michigan reported 7 new cases on Monday, 7 new deaths on Monday, and 384 new cases as stronger laws on mask wearing went into effect statewide. The state of Michigan is seeing an increase in the number of known cases of the disease COVID-19, with a 7-week high for new infections occurring last week, total exceeding 3,400 new cases. The average number of new cases for the past 7 days ending on Monday was up to 507 new cases per day, from an average of 382 per day from the previous 7-day period, according to state data. Reported deaths and hospitalizations due to the disease remain relatively low compared to the spring, but deaths are at a 4-week high, with 95 total COVID-19 related deaths last week. The state health department confirmed that 69,722 cases of COVID-19 have been in the state of Michigan up to this point, with 6,075 deaths. Where probable cases are added, Michigan's case total reaches about 77,198 deaths, with a death toll of 6,321. So still relatively severe spike we've seen recently, but not entirely a cause for concern just yet, as we've seen that little spike come in early to mid last week and maintain itself through the end of the week. It's kind of trending back downward now, and hopefully it keeps going in that direction, Ronnie.
We definitely hope so, because we need this not only to keep our businesses open, to keep going forward, looking ahead to the school year. I am sure there are a lot of parents, Tyler, that want their kids to be going back to school, because there are so many facets to this. You have to remember, with so many companies and businesses reopening, parents are now having to go physically to work, so they're not necessarily home teleworking anymore or as often as they were when this first broke out, which, while difficult to work at home and try to homeschool your kids too at the same time, at least you were home. So if the kids don't go back to school in the fall, is that going to be an issue with childcare for so many parents out there?
Yeah, definitely something that's front of mind for parents and for families in the local area that are preparing their kids to go back to school in the next month, a little over a month, when kids return to learning in one capacity or another. And that's definitely going to depend on what phase of the Michigan Safe Start Plan, the My Safe Start Plan, that we are on at that point in time. And hopefully we remain in phase 4, or even better yet, in phase 5 by that point. It's going to depend on how these COVID-19 cases continue to trend going forward. Also making headlines lastly on civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, Michigan may move to shield businesses from coronavirus-related lawsuits. We spoke just a couple minutes ago about liability issues related to the mask-wearing law and others. Michigan business owners across the state are looking for answers on how COVID-19 changes their legal liability as they reopen to the public and make changes for public health as well. According to an article in Bridge, Michigan magazine, State Representative Thomas Albert from Lowell is spearheading legislation that would address business liability for Michigan businesses that follow executive orders and CDC guidelines. The bill is in development and subject to change at this point in time. If a business under the current draft of the bill, if a business is operating in a prudent manner by following federal or state regulations or executive orders, it would be protected from civil liability. At least 4 states across the United States of America have passed laws granting businesses immunity from lawsuits related to COVID-19. So that's a developing story that could really help a lot of these small businesses maybe ease their worries more than anything about potential liability issues, as a lot of them, the vast majority, are enforcing these new laws and are putting forth the guidelines and making sure to follow those CDC and state and county guidelines as strictly as they possibly can. But there also is going to be that looming worry about, what if that still isn't enough and I'm still liable, and this is a law that may potentially protect them from that?
I think it's not so much as people who may have, felt like they got the disease from, or the virus rather, from your establishment, but really this could be a potential employee backlash for a lot of these businesses. Because if I'm an employee and I feel like I had to come to work and I potentially picked up this virus while I was at work, are you now liable for that? And I think that will really play a big part in this potential to change, the civil lawsuit liability issues, and this is going to play a part in the language of how they're going to shape it.
It's still a developing story. The law, of course, is not finalized yet. It's not currently been voted on. It's still very much in the early portions of it. Sponsored, of course, by State Representative Thomas Albert from Lowell, the Republican state legislature. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we will talk about the continued response to the pandemic from a local health standpoint, and then talk about law enforcement issues related to the mask order and more. You're watching and listening to the Oakland County Megacast. Ronnie and I will return after this quick break.
Hello, I'm Dr. Faust, Medical Director for the Oakland County Health Division. Coronavirus disease 2019, or COVID-19, is a new disease caused by a new respiratory virus named SARS-CoV-2. COVID-19 was first identified in December 2019. There is currently no vaccine to prevent coronavirus disease 2019. The best way to prevent illness is to avoid being exposed to this virus. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, especially after going to the bathroom, before eating, and after blowing your nose, coughing, or sneezing. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects and surfaces using a regular household cleaning spray or wipe. Avoid close contact with people who are sick, and avoid touching your eyes, your nose, your mouth. Cover your cough or sneeze with a tissue, then throw the tissue in the trash. Finally, stay home when you're sick. For more information about coronavirus disease 2019, go to oakgov.com/health or call 1-800-848-5533.
Michigan, we still need to stay careful because we don't want to go backwards. Back to where we started. So keep standing 6 feet apart. Keep wearing a mask in public. And if you have symptoms, talk to a healthcare provider about getting tested. To move forward, let's all do our part. So stay careful. Michigan.gov/coronavirus.
Welcome back to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. In addition, we're on 88.1 WBFH, The Biff, today, and as always, on Birmingham Area Municipal Access. Both of our TV outlets on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99 in the local area. And we're also online on civiccentertv.com/watch-live. If you go to our website on civiccentertv.com, you're going to be able to just really easily click on this watch live link, or just go into the player we have on the side of our page. If you're watching us on TV, you're seeing that right now. You're able to watch us in full high definition right from our website, civiccentertv.com. You'll click on Watch Live. In addition, today we are on Ronnie Dahl's Facebook page, her reporter page, and thank her fans and her followers for joining us today. If it's your first time tuning in, we thank you for being with us. We are here each and every day from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on our family of TV and radio outlets all throughout the local area, talking to you about the latest coronavirus information and more. And joining us now from the Oakland County Health Department, it is Shane Bies, the Administrator of Public Health Nursing Services, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. Shane, thank you for being with us today.
Happy to be here.
How are you? How's your team at the Health Department been holding up?
We've been holding up. We've been busy, and things are continuing to evolve, and we continue to evolve with them. But there's been a lot of good work done and a lot more good work to get done.
New case numbers have been, over the last couple days, in the high 300s. I know that not this current 7-day period that just ended yesterday, but the previous 7-day period, it was right around 380. But not nearly as concerning as the 600-plus cases we were getting day by day, or right around that day by day, later on last week. Are things looking better now than maybe they were a few days ago in terms of these COVID-19 cases, or is there still a cause for concern that we're in a bit of a spike?
Short answer is there is still a cause for concern. It is good that statewide and in Oakland County, the last week or so, the numbers seem to have stabilized. But they've stabilized at a number that's a little higher than we'd like. Just for some comparison's sake, where we are with the cases, a daily average cases per million people, which is about averaging about 30 to 40 cases per million residency. So for Oakland County, that works out to about 50, 60, 70 cases a day. That was right about mid-March. That's where we were right about mid-March before things really took off. And that's the thing with COVID-19 and exponential growth. You don't see just how bad it is until it's just that bad. And so I think what you can see with these numbers kind of stabilizing over the last week, people are kind of realizing that, and we just need them to take a few extra steps so we can push down those case numbers and the positivity rate, which is also inched up a little bit from about 1% in Oakland County that we have been seeing to closer now to its 3%. That's a far cry from what you're seeing in states like Arizona, Texas, and Florida, but it's still the wrong direction. And so I just really want to encourage all your listeners and everybody that you can do. I heard you talking about a little bit beforehand. We should all, especially as parents, myself included, I got 3 kids, we should all be extremely motivated to do everything we can right now, wearing masks, still continue social distance. I haven't gotten a haircut for 5 months. To be able to get those kids back into school and help them get a good quality education and protect teachers and other staff for when there is school, hopefully. But we got to put in the work now. We can't put in the work at the end of August.
I'm not sure what your hair looked like before, but it still looks great right now. And I have to say, though, as a parent and a healthcare professional, how are you trying to teach your kids the importance of having a mask on, and what advice do you give to other parents?
Well, my kids are 8, 10, and 12, and my wife and I, we lead by example. It's just something we do. If we got to take them in to someplace with us, we hand them their mask, we put on our mask, and we make sure that that mask, as much as we're able to, is as comfortable for them as possible. Children and frankly adults aren't going to do something that isn't as convenient as it can be or isn't as comfortable as it can be. So if that means you just don't like wearing your mask because it doesn't fit right, or it's one that goes around the ears and doesn't tie behind the head, or vice versa, work to find one that does work for you, that you don't mind putting on, that you don't mind wearing it. But here's the thing, after you do it a few times, it gets to be habit. It's like putting on your watch in the morning when you're going out the door. You grab your watch, for me, or you put on a necklace, or you put on your mask. It's and once you get in that habit, you'll be walking into a building and you'll realize, oh, I forgot, just because it's that habit, and you're like, I'm missing something.
So going into school in the fall, do you think it's better for kids to wear a mask, or what about those shield visors? Would that be a possibility? And which one do you think would be better for them, depending on their age, of course? I mean, high school kids are a little bit better trained and can follow direction more than elementary or junior high kids. So which one do you think would work better for them?
Really, really short answer is masks. Hands down. While a face shield can help augment while you're wearing a mask, there's no substitution for a face shield instead of a mask. And that's just because the extra space around a face shield that can still allow way too much airflow exchange and potentially contaminating others if you happen to be sick or asymptomatic and be infectious. Now, when we talk about ages of kids, with some of the roadmap that the governor's laid out, they are looking at, kindergarten through 5th grade, not wearing masks while they're in a classroom. Now, while they're on a bus or while they're in the hallway, yes. And then all other grades, 6th grade and bigger, wearing masks. And there's some reasons behind that. Is when you have kindergartners and 5th graders in the classroom, you can more easily control where they are and what they're doing, and they're all going to be, generally speaking, in that same classroom all day long or around that same group of kids. Whereas 6th graders and above, they're mixing classes and they're going to and fro, and so and they're able to also, generally speaking, like you say, able to wear those masks more easily. And so while face shields is great to go in addition to a mask, they're not an appropriate substitution for a mask.
Shane Bies with us. He is the Administrator of Public Health Nursing Services at the Oakland County Health Department, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And you hear a lot of skeptics about toward the mask wearing and is it even effective? From a medical perspective, how effective is the mask in preventing the spread of the coronavirus to other people who are wearing masks, to other people that aren't wearing masks, as opposed to somebody that's not wearing a mask at all?
So one important concept that I want to make sure that we understand is that when we first started talking about masks, and I'm going to go all the way back into March and April, there was conversations, should people wear masks? What kind of mask should they wear? Is it worth doing it? There wasn't a lot of hard science that had been done prior to that. And there was this concept of, I am wearing a mask to protect myself. You talk about those medical grade masks, those N95s that you get fitted for, and that you make sure that if you're around people who are infectious, you at least are protected. Well, then there was this concept of, I am wearing a mask to protect others. And the amazing thing is that you don't have to have those N95 medical grade masks, and you don't have to be fitted for them. That the simple act of any kind of face covering, cotton, satin, just about anything that you can put over your face, that helps prevent those droplets spread, and it protects others from you. And then by others wearing a mask, they protect you from themselves. And we talk about habits. Michigan has one of the highest rates of any state. I think has been constantly ranked as number one or number two for people, the percentage of people wearing seatbelts. Upwards of 95+% of people in Michigan wear seatbelts consistently. And seatbelts do nothing to protect others. They protect you in the case of an accident. Well, what if seatbelts, by wearing a seatbelt, you could protect others in addition to yourself? And that's what masks are. Masks are a seatbelt that, by simply just putting those on, whenever you go around other people, step into a store if you have to real quick, you could protect others and potentially save their lives. That is, I think, a very important concept that we need to kind of keep in mind, is that just like so many other safety things in society, masks are just one more of them.
Shane, there's been a program put in place in Oakland County. They're going to be helping schools in the fall put some nurses into various schools throughout the county. Is your department, being that you're in the public health nursing services, involved in that? What is that going to look like, and maybe how are those nurses going to be distributed in the fall to our schools?
Yeah, we're actively interviewing right now applicants, and I'd just like to put in a plug for that. If anybody's interested, anybody with an associate nursing degree or a bachelor's nursing degree, they can go to www.oakgov.com/jobs and can just search for school nursing, and they'll pop right up, and we'd appreciate their application. We've interviewed almost 60 applicants now, and we're making offers, and we're looking, and we're actively getting them hired on. And the idea is that these people, these nurses, will be an extension of the health division and go into school districts and be able to assist with them with their back to school plans and trying to help them answer all these questions and how to communicate and cooperate with the local health division, as school districts are required to do with the back to school safe roadmap from the governor.
Shifting just a little bit, obviously the focus has been on COVID-19, but the health department has other services. What do you want the general public to know about what your staff does on a day-to-day, and what advantages and what programs are for the general public to take advantage of?
Well, there's a few that I want to highlight specifically around this time of year that's particularly important, and one that's been critical since COVID-19 has started up, and even before then. So the first thing I want to mention is our Nurse on Call service, and that phone number is 1-800-848-5533. That's 1-800-848-5533, and we also have an email address at noc@oakgov.com. That stands for Nurse on Call. And we have many full-time public health nurses that are trained. They can help you get an appointment for a COVID test. They can help you sort out, what some of these executive orders mean. They can help you out with, if you're a parent and you have some concerns about back to school, they can talk to you about that. And they can also connect you with other community services. Even if we don't provide the service, we can connect you to so many in the community, because that's what our Nurse on Call does year round. And we have fielded literally tens of thousands of phone calls just surrounding COVID-19 since all this began. So I really want to encourage everybody to use that if they need to. But specifically, I also just want to highlight the fact of vaccines and vaccinations. Now, we don't have one for COVID-19 yet. We hopefully will sooner rather than later. And I know there's a lot of people that are a lot smarter than me that are all working on that from a lot of different places. And so I'm really looking forward to when that is available, but it's not yet. However, there's a lot of vaccines that are, and unfortunately, due to COVID-19, there's a lot of children, specifically under the age of 2, who are not up to date on their vaccines. Somewhat understandable given all the shutdowns recently, but we've been encouraging physicians, and now we're trying to encourage parents to connect with their pediatricians and their family doctors to start getting their kids vaccinated, especially for back to school. The last thing we want to have to deal with is another vaccine preventable disease outbreak on top of the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's Vaccination rates are unfortunately down statewide. It's no different here in Oakland County, but there are catch-up schedules. You just got to work with your pediatrician on the most appropriate timing of those vaccines, and you can also make an appointment here with us, here in the health division, for that by calling Nurse on Call. And then when it comes time, which will be very soon, not just school-required vaccines, but also influenza vaccinations. We only have about 30-40% of Oakland County that gets vaccinated in any given year with an influenza vaccine. And we are just really encouraging everybody that when it's available, get vaccinated with your influenza vaccine. Is it perfect? No, it doesn't provide 100% coverage, but no vaccine does. But the more people that gets that vaccine, the less influenza activity we'll see, and the less morbidity and the less disease and the less, potential negative consequences from influenza that we'll have to deal with, again, on top of COVID-19. So we want to help protect our healthcare system to respond to COVID-19. And one of those things we can do is by preventing disease and other illnesses from going into the hospital system.
Shane, is there anything else that you feel it's important to touch on today before we let you go?
I just really want to encourage everybody, again, think long-term. Think right now what you can do, what small changes. It might not feel like a big deal, but what small changes you can do in your daily life to help limit the spread of COVID-19. Don't wait for it to get bad again. Do it right now and help us keep it where it is. Whether that's wearing a mask more often than you do, whether that's encouraging somebody, that a family member perhaps, that should be wearing a mask more often than they do, ask them to wear that. And we want to get back out. We want to socialize more. And believe me, I really understand that. However, if there are some things that we can pause and we can delay getting, still such as a haircut sometimes, we should still try to be doing that. Don't throw those house parties. Don't congregate in large numbers. Still order carry out instead of maybe sitting down. That way you're still supporting, your local businesses. I've been ordering a lot of carry out from some of my favorite restaurants because I want to support them. But I haven't suggested to my family that we go in and sit down. The food is just as good in a carry out, and it lowers the risk for us to be exposed to COVID-19 or for us to expose those workers to COVID-19. So we just need to continue to do as many changes as we can to help lower that spread. Oh, I got to move around a little bit more.
Well,
Make sure my time lights don't go off.
That's all right. Thank you very much for being with us, Shane.
All right. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Appreciate having you on. Shane Bies with us from the Oakland County Health Division. He is with he's the administrator of public health nursing services with Oakland County, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. And really a lot of great messages there from Shane and his team in regards to why these orders, this mask order is so critical, why wearing a mask is so important and vital to continuing the work to stop the spread of coronavirus in our community in the state of Michigan and get back to a point where we were a couple weeks ago, or really last week early on, looking optimistic into the future in terms of how we were fighting this disease.
It's always nice to get the perspective from the healthcare industry, and those are much more knowledgeable than we are, or the general public, on this virus and how it's impacting all of us. So many good perspectives that we get right here on the Megacast, and we always appreciate having them on.
Yeah, it's great to talk to Shane. Great to talk always to the Oakland County Health Division as they're continuing to do great work to spread quality information and important information to the community. And also another person doing that is Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard, who joins us now on the Oakland County Megacast. Sheriff Bouchard, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How are you? How are your sheriffs doing?
Well, our deputies are challenged. I have to be honest with you. It's a difficult time in law enforcement. The terrible actions by a few in Minneapolis or elsewhere don't reflect quite frankly, on the character and integrity and professionalism of the vast majority of those in law enforcement, but somehow a lot of that negativity is being foisted on them. They're hearing themselves being yelled at, the names called, and most of the people that put on a uniform, whether it's at home or abroad, police or fire service, military, do so because they want to make a difference. They don't do it because the pay is great, because it's not. They don't do it for the hours, because they're not great hours. They do it because they want to make a difference. And that's where the heart and soul of most men and women that put on a uniform, especially the ones that I'm honored to work with that I've seen. I can't speak for everybody, but certainly the ones that I've seen. Yes, there are some bad apples and they need to be held accountable, and we need to do more on those fronts. And I'm in 100% agreement and have pushed for changes for years that have other agencies that haven't done some of the things we've done move along. But it's challenging for them to, put on a uniform every day in the midst of not only COVID, but now increased kind of negativity towards them and their profession. And there's a lot of people that, are struggling, quite frankly, but they put on their uniform, they go out there every day, and they do a tough job in even tougher circumstances. So I'm immensely proud of them.
Well, Sheriff Bouchard, be sure to extend our gratitude to them for coming to work every day. One thing I think your office has been really good at is trying to humanize the badge through your social media sites and highlighting the good work that the men and women of the Oakland County Sheriff's Department is doing and has been doing. But with this recent sentiment, how much do you think that's going to hurt your recruiting ability?
Oh, you're spot on, Ronnie. As always, the challenges there were already pretty difficult. We typically, I would say going back, let's say 10, 15 years, you'd have one opening and you'd have 5,000 applicants. Now, we may be down to 500 applicants for the same one opening. And I think it's only going to get worse. And obviously, one of the most important things for better police outcomes is to have better inflow. So we have more men and women of character that have a broad and diverse background from different communities, different religions, different races that we get to hire. We actively recruit everywhere, but less and less people are showing interest. And just about a week and a half ago, we had 7 in the final phases to be hired by our agency, and they notified us they're no longer going to go into law enforcement. They just feel the tension and the stress is too high, and so they're going to do something else. That's not a good trend when you have people opting out that had the heart for it, but now just don't, think it's the direction they want to go.
What type of dialogue do you think we can have as a community, even when it's uncomfortable, to try to switch this narrative, or is it even possible at this time?
Well, I think it is. I mean, so many people have, kind of pushed into camps on virtually every issue. And we need to kind of break that down a bit and get back to problem solving and relationship building. We've got, very robust mechanisms to build relationships at the sheriff's office. Most of the programs we do not really directly affect or impact law enforcement per se, but they affect the way we can help the community we serve. So, for example, we have a sheriff's recycle program where we fix up bikes that have been stolen or abandoned, donated, and we fix them up with labor from the Oakland County Jail. With the inmates working on them, we have a program where we use a variety of volunteers. We spruce up these bikes, and then we give them out to kids that otherwise wouldn't be able to afford a bicycle. So is that a police thing? No, but we saw a need in the community, and we also saw a way to build relationships with the community, especially young people. And so that was one of the programs I launched. We have probably 15 or 20 programs that are just that. They're targeted on a need of the community that really has nothing to do with law enforcement. So, for example, we partner with Variety Feeds Kids, and it's the only program of its kind in the country. We feed 4 elementary schools when they were still in session in Pontiac. Every Friday, our deputies would hand out food to all the kids going home because most of them were below the poverty line and didn't have the ability to have food in the house for the weekend. And this would be enough food to carry them through the weekend. So, again, not really a law enforcement thing. It's the lack of food and poverty. But we stepped in with our great partner, Variety Feeds Kids, to fill that void. And a beautiful offspring of that was building relationships with the kids. When we first got in there, a lot of the young kids were hesitant and shy of seeing the uniform, and some would even say their relatives were in our jail. And now they come running up, they hug our deputies, they show them their report cards. They're building those relationships, which will be great in the future, and hopefully some of them will want to do law enforcement as a career. So we're trying to get through this with positive programming. We're trying to uplift our men and women with support. We've had to expand our peer-to-peer support programs because you may or may not know, but last year more police officers committed suicide than died in the line of duty. So on top of the dangerous profession, it's stressful. So, we've got a lot of balls in the air we're juggling, and we're trying to do that simultaneously with recruiting more men and women of character from broad and diverse backgrounds, because we're down about 50, 60 people. We have vacancies right now.
So staffing is an issue, and now we came out with this mask mandate. How is your department going to handle that?
Well, we've handled all these from the beginning that, we respond to 100% of the complaints, of any kind of complaint. So even before this, so if your neighbor was cutting your, too close to the edge of your property and neighbors were getting in arguments over different things, we respond to every call, and we have since COVID started. And typically our deputy responds and goes out and finds out what's going on. We found statistically about 92% of the calls for violations are not actually. The person may not have known the circumstances that called. They may not have known it's family members, so they don't necessarily need to be social distancing. And the mask issue is even more problematic because there are certain things we cannot ask. And, so for example, if you have a medical condition that prevents you from wearing a mask, which is one of the exemptions, you can't ask what that medical condition is. And so, puts a lot of awkward positioning on folks, and there's other exemptions too. So basically in fact, I think the Oakland County Executive through its health department is putting out a notice today, basically, that if you have an issue where someone comes to a business and refuses to follow that business's guidelines, which, is wearing a mask or whatever, the old no shirt, no service, no shoes, no service. Now, a business can add as part of the new requirements, no mask, no service. Well, if somebody refuses to leave or comply, that's within that business's right. And the Oakland County Health Department saying call police for a trespass complaint. If it's a mask violation where the business is not complying, to call them. So that's kind of going to be the process. I think Macomb County and other counties have kind of adopted that too. Most of these are health order related. So we're already stretched on so many other kinds of calls. Our calls for service are up year over year quite a bit.
So, Sheriff, we have just about 2 minutes left. I have to ask you, where's Deputy Max?
Deputy Max is actually in the office, sleeping somewhere.
Sleeping on the job.
Yeah, he's one of the few that gets to do that. And Deputy Taser is over at the Rochester Hill substation right now. He actually has a bit of an issue with his leg, and unfortunately, I think we'll have to have a little surgery. He's got a tendon that pops out, but they're both great, doing super. And once things slow down a little bit, we've already got offers to donate a couple more of the Comfort and canines. As you know, we have a bunch of big German Shepherds that do the tracking and the narcotics and all of those kinds of things. We've added the 2 Comfort therapy dogs, and we're hoping to add more. And probably, we added these before all of this started. People are more anxious and more depressed and more on edge than ever. I'm looking forward to adding a couple more of those dogs that bring smiles and relief to people in challenging moments.
They definitely do. And for anyone who's not familiar, follow them on social media. They have their own social media. 20 seconds left. Anything you want to end with?
Just thank you to everybody in Oakland County, that have helped and supported law enforcement. If you have a chance, whether it's police, fire service, medical service, EMS, just say, hey, thanks. I know you're doing a tough job. That they don't ask for it, but I know our frontline folks and other frontline folks appreciate that. I appreciate the support you've given our men and women on the front lines. It means a great deal. Appreciate it very much.
Sheriff Bouchard, Sheriff Bouchard, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. You have a great day.
You as well. Sheriff Michael Bouchard with us, the Oakland County Sheriff, with us on the Oakland County Megacast. We appreciate having him on to talk about a lot of various issues going on in law enforcement in our community, including enforcing of the mask law, how they're relating with these local businesses to make sure that they're doing their part without putting themselves in any sort of danger. And then, of course, the continued calls to defund the police, what that may look, how that's affecting his department and his deputies as well, and how important it is to continue on that conversation with the community going forward to prevent the issues that we've seen across the country from becoming major issues here in Oakland County as well. That will do it for today's edition of the Oakland County Megacast. Ronnie and I will return tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. We thank you for joining us today on the Oakland County Megacast.